Okay, I'm going to start. So good morning, everybody, and welcome to the launch of the HMI Probation Equity, Diversity and Inclusion Strategy for 2024 to 2026. I'm Martin Jones, Chief Inspector of Probation. We're going to be talking through aspects of our strategy, and most of the talking is going to be done by the people that have actually done all the hard work underpinning the strategy, but I'm going to say a few words of introduction. We're hopefully going to talk for about 25 to 30 minutes about the strategy itself, and then leave plenty of time for any questions that you may have once we've concluded the introduction. Can I have the next slide, please, Holly? So just to say a few words about the Inspectorate. Our vision at the Inspectorate is to provide inspection, to provide high quality probation and youth justice services that change people's lives for the better. And obviously we're the independent inspector of probation and youth justice services for England and Wales, and we set the standards on the quality and impact of those services. And our inspections, reviews, research and effective practice products provide authoritative and evidence-based judgments and guidance. And we use our voice to drive system change with a focus on inclusion and diversity, and hopefully lead to improved outcomes for both individuals and communities. Can I have the next slide, please? So our EDI strategy. So in terms of what we're going to talk about today, we're going to talk about the importance of EDI for the Inspectorate. We're going to talk about where we started, the progress that we've made so far. It is important to talk about progress that we've made so far, because it's very much about being on a journey, and I wouldn't say we've reached the end of our destination yet. We are going to talk about where we're going, the various different work streams that we have underway, and then we how we are challenging ourselves, but also learning from others. Can I have the next slide, please? So in terms of our organisation, our mission statement is to drive forward positive change in equity, diversity and inclusion for everybody all the time, creating an equitable, diverse and fully inclusive organisation with a safe culture where everyone has a voice and all lived experiences are valued. We want to integrate equity, diversity and inclusion into all aspects of our work, evolving with the times and influencing others to do the same. Can I have the next slide, please? So in terms of what that means for us, that means an equitable, diverse and inclusive approach, the need for us to have cultural humility, learning from others and also challenging ourselves, providing the opportunities for us to build strength and endurance, and embedding long-term change. Next slide, please. And just in terms of where we started here, this has very much been driven internally from HMI Probation in relation to the Equity and Diversity and Inclusion team. And we looked at this in three ways: heads, hands and heart. Heads being our strategy, what's our purpose, our mission. Very much then looking at hands, what's the delivery plan, what action? It's not about having a strategy. What action are we going to take to ensure that we deliver upon our aims, to ensure that we can deliver on our mission and purpose? And then finally, our heart. What are our relationships, and how do we want to work together to ensure that we drive out the right outcomes? And hopefully that approach will be embodied in the subsequent presentation, where we'll be talking to the various different people that have led on these aspects of the strategy, to talk through what our plans and our progress are. So without further ado, I think I'm passing over to Hannah now.
Thanks, Martin. Hello everyone, my name's Hannah Williams. I'm the Welsh language lead. So I'm just going to give you a quick overview of the activity we've done in relation to this. So this year we revised our Welsh language scheme, and it was approved by the Welsh Language Commissioner in February 2024, and it's published on our website. Our scheme demonstrates our commitment to delivering equally high standard of inspection, whether that's conducted in Welsh or English, and that we will monitor how well we carry out our inspections in Wales. And we really want to get this right in Wales, and we want to build and develop the knowledge and skill set within the Inspectorate on working in a Welsh context, and that includes recognising the importance of Welsh culture and the Welsh language. So this slide just sets out some of the key activities we've delivered under the commitments we've set out in our scheme. And this includes translation of key documents, increase in our Welsh speaking Inspectorate staff, regular engagement with Welsh Government and other key personnel, inspections delivered using the Welsh language, as I mentioned, annual reporting against our Welsh language scheme, review of our webpage, the Cymraeg webpage, and also focused internal development sessions with staff on the Welsh language scheme and our commitments that we've set out in it. So it's just a really quick overview, and I'll hand over now to Mitch, I believe.
Diolch yn fawr, Hannah. Croeso I pawb. Good morning, everybody. Welcome. Yeah, can I have the next slide, please? I'm going to quickly talk about our minority ethnic shadowing scheme that we've run since 2020 here at the Inspectorate. And I think there was a recognition internally from our staff, the EDI kind of group, that actually our staff isn't as reflective as it should be in terms of ethnicity and in terms of the context of the work that we do. So we started the scheme in 2020, and HMI Probation is committed to building a workforce that is representative of all protected characteristics, but ethnicity is a particular area of focus given the context of our work. So the purpose of the scheme is to help break down barriers and empower individuals from minority ethnic backgrounds to feel confident in applying for roles within the Inspectorate. We hope, and we see this now, that by making our recruitment processes more accessible and appealing, we can ensure that we attract all the diverse talent from the sector to bring the right skills into the organisation so we can conduct inspection practice as effectively as possible. So our objectives of the scheme provides practical insight into HMIs and assistant. So it provides practical insight to the inspector role and assistant inspectors, giving potential applicants a clear understanding of what the job entails. It supports broader initiatives across the Inspectorate to make sure our workforce is more representative. And we hope that it helps candidates succeed past the SIFT process, and that will ensure that it aligns with bringing the kind of talent and diverse thinking that we need into the organisation. And how we do this is we provide observations and opportunities to discuss with applicants the ins and outs of the role, presenting both rewards and challenges of the role, and giving them some first-hand experience in terms of how the job will look if they were to be successfully appointed. So in terms of how the scheme's run so far, we launched in 2020 and we've run 3 shadowing schemes thus far. We don't have the data from the first round, but since then, for the second 2, we've had 74 people who participated in the scheme, which has been really, really positive. We saw an initial influx and a rise in the kind of diversity data across our organisation, but we're really conscious to keep that effort going moving forwards into the future. As you can see on the screen there, we've just got some quotes that have come back from the shadowing scheme, which has been received really, really positively from the participants. And also, we've had other organisations reach out to us as well to kind of inquire about the scheme and understand the process to see if they can kind of take on some of the principles to see if they can also apply it to their organisations. So yeah, it's been a positive initiative, but something we are continue to develop and continue to work with moving forwards. So now I'll hand over to Ash for the next slide.
Thanks, Mitch. Yeah, so I'm going to just talk through some of our area of work within child, parent and carer participation and engagement. So the area of our inspection where we connect directly with children, parents and carers to gather their views and feedback of the services they've received from the Youth Justice Service. So within this area of work, so we sort of built it from a recognition of the value of lived and living experience, trying to create meaningful opportunities for those voices to be heard, and supporting that feedback then to have an influence on our inspection activity as well. So I'll talk you through some of the key aspects that we've developed over the last sort of year or so that we've been working on to support inclusivity and participation from those individuals as well. So trialing new methods. So over the last sort of 12 months or so, we've redeveloped, redesigned some of our internal documents that go out to inspected services, to also to promote children's participation as well. We've developed introduction documents to children so they can have a face or see a face before they interact and connect with us. preliminary texts as well going out to children before we interact and contact them as well. We've done some internal remapping of schedules to give us additional space and time to meet with more and more children as well during fieldwork week. Capturing diversity needs before we connect with children as well. So really important that we try and understand as much as we can about the child before we start to have a conversation with them as well. We've also been sort of organising and visiting and sharing sessions, conversations with children at venues that they are familiar with as well. So sometimes not necessarily where the inspection is happening, but within the offices that they're familiar with as well. Workshops as well with children. So over the last year and early this year, we've held a series of workshops across youth justice services where we were able to directly connect with justice involved children. We've facilitated those workshops with those children who are accessing youth justice services. And during that, we were able to ask children what they felt were important areas to focus on in our new framework. We talked them through our standards and also took their perspectives and views on what they felt were important areas for us to inspect as well during our fieldwork week. We've started looking at engagement and methods of engagement as well. So the questions we ask and how we also close that feedback loop as well. So the methods that we use currently are virtual, in-person, text and phone options to children. So various ways to connect with us. Young people have supported us also through the workshops to revise the questions that we ask in our conversations with children. And we're presently also drafting a child-friendly inspection report on what that could look like. With the view that an inspected organisation will receive not only the findings in both they'll receive the findings in both a professional and a child-friendly version to ensure that feedback loop is closed and children can actually see what their voice has influenced as well. We've been undertaking a series of youth pilots, including child, parent and carer participation as well. And we use this opportunity to test out some of our new engagement methods, some of our new framework around child, parent, carer participation as well. So undertaking a series of pilots, we were able to test some of that out. We've learned and revised approaches from that feedback as well. And we're also having ongoing wider consultation as well. We are currently planning and preparing for delivery of child advisory groups, where we'll be facilitating sessions with justice involved children who are connected to services across the country to shape HMI business activities as well. And our first focus on that is our web page as well. So a dedicated web page for children, parents and carers as well. As part of our drive to improve inclusivity, increase participation on our inspections, we worked with a youth-led organisation called Peer Power. We co-produced with them and their young people connected with that organisation. We co-produced an animation. The young people who took part were justice and care experienced young people. We held a series of workshops to plan and prepare a method as well to increase children's participation with Peer Power. Some focus groups, some presentations and some sort of planning meetings as well. Young people really took the lead within that. They planned and worked on us with the animation studio as well to produce the product, which we'll share with you shortly. The animation itself, I suppose, serves as an additional method to encourage children's involvement and contribution to inspections. And what we're hoping to do is, within the new programme as well, is to launch the animation. And so services can also use that to when they're encouraging children, parents, carers to participate in inspections and give their feedback as well. So I think we're going to be able to play that animation for you now.
How do you feel about your youth justice service? Have you ever wanted to voice your thoughts and opinions? Did you know that the Youth Justice Service is accountable to an organisation called HMI Probation, His Majesty's Inspectorate of Probation? They're there to listen and make sure you're being treated with respect, equality and empathy. Young people have a unique perspective. They're experts in their own experience. HMI Probation has had feedback from the Youth Justice Services, but we haven't heard consistently from young people. We need to shift the balance to hear the voice of young people involved with youth justice services and respond to them. Inspecting from HMI Probation has made a real change to young people's experiences of the youth justice system across England and Wales. How does it work?
I chose to speak to HMI Probation. It was my decision.
They didn't judge me and they helped me feel at ease. They asked me about things like how I was treated and supported, what more could be done to help me, and what resources were available to help with stuff like education and employment.
It was great to have my views taken seriously, to have my voice heard. The inspector listened to me and wrote up a report reflecting the views of myself, the Youth Justice Service and all the data.
I feel confident that things with my Youth Justice Service can and will improve.
I know things won't transform overnight, but I'm part of a bigger vision for change.
By listening and understanding the experiences of young people, HMI Probation creates recommendations to improve the Youth Justice Service.
We can't have a youth justice system without a youth voice.
We all have something to say.
HMI Probation is a part of the system that listens. To take part and make your voice heard, speak to a member of your Youth Justice Service who can arrange for you to speak to HMI Probation when they visit.
Thank you, Ash. Next slide, please, Holly. Okay, so you've heard quite a lot about what we've done so far and the progress that we're making, including areas that we continue to work upon. What we will cover now is things that we're doing in the future in terms of the equity, diversity and inclusion strategy and our action plan. We will now invite some colleagues to talk about these areas in more detail, but just to provide a quick overview, we've identified 3 work streams that we will focus on through the organisation, and these include a diverse and inclusive workforce and culture, inspecting equity, diversity and inclusion externally, and our learning and development internally and how we can share that externally as well. We have a group of staff across the inspectorate from different grades and different teams who are working towards each of the work streams, and dedicated owners that are responsible for taking the actions forward, monitoring progress and sharing the progress that we're making. We will undertake regular reviews of our action plans and our progress. And the other thing that we will look for is to source some of our work externally in terms of assistance that we might require, recognising that there might be some experience and expertise that exist externally within the organisation as well. So just to provide a bit of a further detail on each of those work streams, I'll hand over to some of our leads, starting with Hannah first on diverse and inclusive workforce and culture. Thank you, Hannah.
Thanks, Simi. So as Simi mentioned, this slide gives an overview of the work stream for diverse and inclusive workforce and culture. So as an organisation, we are committed to being an organisation where difference is positively valued and everyone feels equally involved, supported and recognised. We want to eliminate discrimination, advancing equality of opportunity and fostering good relationships between different people, and safeguarding against discrimination involving any of the protected characteristics. We want to promote and embed an inclusive culture within the organisation, making equity, diversity and inclusion everybody's responsibility and a constant priority. So ingraining equity, diversity and inclusion into our organisational culture and ensure that everyone feels empowered in the work that we do, including having confidence and a safe space to challenge. So some of the activity outlined on the slide is under this work stream. So that is focused recruitment initiatives to continue to increase equity, diversity and inclusion of staff at all grades, providing care and the best experience for new and existing staff, ensuring a consistent and embedded approach to equity, diversity and inclusion, and strengthening and utilising management information and data to monitor and report on the progress we've made against recruitment and of the experiences of staff. So that's just a really quick overview, and I'll hand to Dave now.
Thank you, Hannah. So the second of our work streams is about how we actually inspect equity, diversity and inclusion, and how we weave that into our inspection findings. So there's a couple of key points here. The first is that we plan to strengthen how we inspect EDI through our inspection frameworks of youth and adult services. That means, in practical terms, making sure that we always consider how inspected bodies are responding to individual needs when we report on effectiveness. We plan to continue publishing our findings in relation to inclusive practice. We do that so that we can shine a light on what's been done well and what could be done better, and so that other parts of the sector can learn from where services have been delivered effectively. We think it's really important for us to take into account the experiences of people on probation and young people involved in the in youth justice services. So you've heard from Ash and in terms of the ways in which we have adapted our approach to seeking the voices of young people and children in the criminal justice system. But we're also on the adult side, we're designing an inspection framework for approved premises at the moment, and that is intended to weave in very closely the views and experiences of residents who are living in approved premises. And we're also trialling better ways of speaking directly with people on probation when we do our PDU, probation delivery unit, and regional inspection work in the adult world. And then finally, as Hannah's already really helpfully outlined, we are committed to treating the Welsh language as equal to English in our inspections in Wales. That means making sure that we issue key inspection documents in Welsh as well as in English, and providing the opportunity for practitioners and people on probation to speak with us in Welsh if that's their preference to do so. And we're working as we speak on ways of ensuring that people have that opportunity. So those are some of the ways we intend to kind of make our intentions in terms of equity, diversity, and inclusive real and applicable to our inspection frameworks. And with that, I will hand over to Mitch.
Thanks, Dave. Can we have the next slide, please? Thank you. So I'm responsible for the third work stream, which is learning development. And I guess it ties into everything that Dave was saying before around about we need the knowledge base to inspect correctly in terms of EDI. It's the core focus of our work, but we are introducing cultural humility training for all staff. So unlike a one-time session, one-off training, the aim of the training is to be integrated into daily roles and responsibility across the organisation. We see that cultural humility needs to come from everybody. So the aim is for every team member to develop a respectful curiosity about different cultural backgrounds, recognising and valuing diverse perspectives. And we hope by embedding cultural humility into our daily work, we ensure that these principles become second nature to our inspections, decision making throughout the whole organisation from top to bottom. We also recognise the need for specific and specialist knowledge. So we are creating a comprehensive information packs on different protected characteristics so people can be well informed in terms of different areas of EDI. These resources will support our understanding of diversity and inclusivity at every level. Staff will have practical guidance that is relevant and easy to apply in their roles. These pathways will serve as a roadmap of ongoing learning, reinforcing our commitment to a fully inclusive environment that supports every individual and our inspection work. And with every initiative, we always need to continuously gather feedback and change our approach, which is where needed and necessary. If we gauge things that are working well, continue and develop those, but then also identify gaps in not only our knowledge, but the processes that we undertake in terms of inspection. The insights we gather directly inform our organisational learning and development plan, ensure it remains responsive to staff needs and continues to foster an inclusive workplace culture, which we hope will translate into our inspection practices. So that's the work stream 3 for learning and development. I'm going to hand over to my colleague Avtar.
Great. Good morning, everybody. My name's Avtar Singh. I'm one of the co-chairs of our Equity, Diversity and Inclusion Group at the Inspectorate. And I just wanted to talk about a couple of things with regard to these two critical areas, really, about challenging ourselves and learning from others, because nobody has a monopoly on lived experiences or understanding of everything. So we have made an intentional commitment to ensuring that we challenge ourselves and also learn from others. We've renamed this particular group, and now it is called Equity, Diversity and Inclusion, and maybe people might have some questions about why we've changed it to this particular language. But this group does include staff from all grades and all departments across the inspectorate to ensure that there is a good, diverse mix in terms of roles and responsibilities, but also in terms of trying to best understand, the lived experiences that people bring. I think one of the key drivers is really about protected characteristics. I think that sometimes there has been a bit of a scrap to say that, some people in protected characteristics are treated poorly, which is absolutely right. But we need to be sensitive and appreciate that everybody, every individual has been on a journey, and where there has been pain because of their protected characteristics, we need to try and support that. So just wanted to reflect on a couple of points. Mitch had mentioned about cultural humility. Cultural humility is something that is relatively new to us as an organisation, and all inspection staff underwent a training, and now we've moved on to that commitment to ensure that all staff across the organisation have access to that. At all our team meetings, we try to make space where people can speak about a lived experience to improve awareness. Historically, people will probably be familiar with, inclusion moments, etc., etc. But what we're trying to do is help people to tell a story, so that we can, engage with that. In terms of learning, we've carried out a number of thematic reviews as well as within our core inspection programme, and there has been considerable learning in terms of the experiences of both staff, children and people on probation, and we want to make sure that we hear and learn from what they have to say. We've designed a language guide, and that has been really, really helpful to inform our report writing. And as you will be aware, at the end of each core inspection, whether it be a youth inspection or an adult inspection, there is an opportunity to have a conversation with the relevant head of programme, who can provide feedback into their experiences, and we would cover equity, diversity and inclusion in that. And unsurprisingly, like many other organisations, we have access to a very full staff bulletin, in which staff are able to share perhaps films that they've watched, documentaries, video clips, literature, which has helped them on their journey to improve their understanding and experience. So we are able to use that. And then finally, where we do receive any complaints, we're able to kind of take a forensic look at that and see what we can learn. And also at different events that we have at the inspectorate, we actively invite, external speakers from different lived experiences and different backgrounds to come and talk to us about their story. So Simi, over to you now.
That's great. Thank you very much, Avtar. On our final slide, Holly, if we could just have the next one, thank you, are the names of the organisation co-chairs for the EDI group. But we are at the end of our session and opening it up really in terms of any questions, reflections, anything that you might want to share. And I know Martin's put in the chat, do feel free to drop in more questions in the chat as well, which Martin and Lou probably have been keeping an eye on as well. So yeah, let's open it up. Let's see what people want to reflect on. Thank you.
Thank you, Simi. Chantel, you the first to put your hand up, so I'll come over to you. I can see we've also got a healthy number of questions in the chat.
Yes, hi. I did ask one question, then I came up with another one actually.
Love it.
Yeah, I've got another one to come. I had a few issues logging on at the start, but I was just wondering, is there a rationale or reasons behind using equity instead of equality? I didn't want to make any assumptions on it.
Chantel,
was that a big question?
Absolutely is a really good question, and I know the team are going to be delighted to talk about it. Simi, Avatar, do you want to maybe have a first shot at that? Anybody else in the team?
Yeah, sure. I'll start and then bring others in as well. So it's a really great question, Chantal, and actually there's some really good illustrations. If you were to Google the difference between equality and equity, there are some graphics that illustrate the difference. With equality, that's about giving everybody the same opportunities and access to the same, let's say, for example, the same resources to undertake the same job or the same opportunities. With equity, it's making sure that each individual is given the right opportunities or the right resources they need to put them on a fair balance or a fair level to do the role or the job that they're actually undertaking themselves. So it's more about the kind of individual need as opposed to everyone gets the same opening resource or the same opening balance that they might need. Avatar, would you want to add anything further to that one?
No, very, very good description. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I ask, is this a change in wording, which I feel really positive about, I have to say, in terms of using that? Is this something that is potentially going to be used more widely and moving away from equalities?
Really good question, Chantel. I mean, I think this has very much been driven internally by the inspectorate in relation to obviously the discussions of this group. There's a very energetic group discussion that we've had around these issues internally that has led us to this. I think it's really about how the conversation needs to develop, actually, and I think when I talked earlier on about the importance of considering this as a journey, based on the fact that we probably don't even know what our sort of final destination is in relation to where we are, but we know that we want to improve upon what we're doing, and I think all organisations need to adopt it in a very similar way. In the relation of quite often, if you went back sort of 10 or 15 years ago, where would people have been? They've been in a very different place to where they are now. So I wouldn't be surprised to find that perhaps other departments start to then maybe look at the language that they use, because I think it's about more than equality. I think this development of it is a really good place to start. But watch this space. Let's see where we are in a couple of years' time. Certainly we'll be feeding it in as part of our when we're on our inspections. Feel free to raise your hands if you've got any other questions, and if not, I was going to maybe go to some of the chat. And as Chantel said, she has already put a question in the chat, so I'm not going to go to you. That's all right, don't worry. Nazir has asked a question around asking for more details on cultural humility training. I've never heard of this, and it sounds really interesting. Now, I know Louisa said that we'll share details after the session. Avatar, do you want to maybe say a few words about that first of all, because you mentioned that as part of your remarks?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I think at the end of the day, we've got to remember is that the point that we want to reach is where we all, irrespective of our lived experiences, feel valued, feel respected, feel included, feel that we belong, have a sense that our contribution matters, we are of worth. And this concept of cultural humility is one that we commissioned an external body to provide a learning experience for the probation inspectorate. And you will probably be able to kind of decode those two words in terms of culture and humility. And in the simplest form, it's actually a move towards having a more humble, a more learning, a more reflective approach to understanding other cultures, and not comparing one culture to another, but actually trying to understand the complete culture. And that culture is not just in terms of language, it's not just in terms of colour, it is culture in a holistic sense. So this whole concept about cultural humility is something that we as an organisation are trying to develop, and to ensure that every member of the staff team knows and feels that their worth is equal to everybody else. And in order to understand each other, we need to show more humility. And humility is really about asking questions. We want to be an organisation which is more inquisitive. So just as a start there, Martin.
Avtar, that was an absolutely brilliant explanation of how it's working out. Really, really insightful. I think the other thing that I would just pick up there, and asking questions, I think, is exactly the way of considering this. But the other thing that really chimes with me is around listening. And certainly in all the time that I've been at the inspectorate, my one reflection, having been here for 8 months, is I don't have any of the answers. The people in the service have the answers. The people in the inspectorate have the answers. It's my job to listen, and that means in relation to both the experience on the ground, but also the experience of people that are experience youth justice or probation as well, and ensuring that you understand those different perspectives. And I've always thought that maybe in some areas of government and the criminal justice system, maybe we don't listen enough. I think listening is an incredibly important and perhaps underappreciated part of our jobs. So anything more we can do to ensure that we listen to people carefully, I think, and considering the fact that we do not necessarily have all the answers and that we're always learning, I think is a good way of approaching this. But thank you so much, Avtar. Mitch, you've got your hand up to add something to that.
Yeah, just to build on what you and Avtar had said, Martin, and I think it addresses Chantel's previous question in the chat as well, around about the differences in terms of cultural competency against kind of cultural humility. I mean, one thing to acknowledge at the start of both kind of approaches are really positive in terms of, promoting that kind of positive dynamics within the workplace. I think for ourselves, in terms of taking the approach of cultural humility and the benefits that we saw it within the kind of that mindset, is the disarming nature, as well as Avtar beautifully explained, is for those people who might not be comfortable in approaching it as well. It being culturally humble across the organisation enables people to feel insecure about these issues and ask the right questions and feel like, I think, and that's probably the starkest contrast that I can say in terms of that and cultural competency. I think with cultural competency, there's a feeling that there's an air of responsibility on the individual to be competent in all regards of cultural humility, which is actually quite a difficult prospect. And as Avtar said, none of us are experts in everything. So I think cultural humility is developing that healthy mindset to be lifelong curious in terms of different cultures, ask the right questions, and feel confident and okay not to know the answers in the first instance, so you can have that kind of psychological safety to step forward and ask the right questions and develop your knowledge yourself. So we felt that really worked for our organisation to go on that journey and have that mindset throughout all of our work.
Cheers, Mitch. Really added to the richness of the answer to that question. Thank you so much. As before, do feel free to raise your hands if you've got a particular question, or put them in the chat as appropriate. Louise, you've got a question that you've posed for us. Do you want to come off mute and read it out to us so we can give us a chance to think about what the answer is?
Thank you. Yes, you might have seen when you had your invitations through, we asked for questions to be submitted ahead of the session. We had a couple of those through, so I thought I'd just drop them in so we can pick them up. Someone asked what the delivery plan and the action plan looks like for the strategy. So what our approach is and how we're going to know that we're delivering on what we're aiming to do. So I don't know if we can pick up on any of those points.
I'll have a first pitch at it, and then I'll look for my assistants on the group to maybe then follow up on the detail of it. I think part of this goes back to our sort of launch point here in relation to sort of head, hands, and heart here, which is ultimately it's good to have the strategy in place in relation to what our ambition is, and I want to do something in this area. But delivery, I think, is really important. I always think that it's a mistake. Ultimately, you need to ensure that you've got some really crunchy deliveries that you measure yourself on. Certainly, that's the approach that we take to inspection as well. So I expect that once we published our strategy, we'll be looking to hold ourselves to account and report on the progress that we're making to ensure that we're making the progress that we would want to make. Certainly, the EDI group, who are full of people that are really passionate about this issue, will be talking to me regularly about the sort of the progress or the areas that we need to improve upon. And I expect 1 year on, we'll do some sort of progress report in relation to how far we've got. I've just said that now, so I hope that doesn't upset people too much. That would be my expectation. And we'll see, and we'll challenge ourselves. But also the other thing that we probably need to look at, and somebody challenged me on this yesterday, we also need to look at how we bring external voices into the work that we're doing. It's not just about us sort of looking internally and giving ourselves a pat on the head to say we could be doing more or we're doing really well. I think it'd be useful to get some external feedback as well on how we're doing. Avatar, Simi, Dave, any comments on that?
No, I think that's absolutely right, Martin. If you look at the strategy that's published on our website, it is published with an associated action plan. So we're really keen to open up, the ways in which we intend to go about delivering the strategy in practice. And of course, we meet regularly as an EDI group within HMIP. We've already started to kind of plot out what we expect to be done and by when. So we'll be providing our SMT with regular updates in terms of our progress on it. But my contact details and Avatar's contact details are in the chat. If you find that there's areas where you think actually we are slipping against our published standards, then by all means get in touch. Or indeed, if you find if you come across us in the course of our GTs and find that you think we're doing stuff particularly well, we'd like to hear from you on that front as well. So yeah, we're really keen to be as transparent as possible because it's important to us. This it matters to people on probation and young people in criminal justice service through youth justice services. And yeah, we're keen to open our doors as much as we possibly can on that front.
Cheers, Dave. I was actually going to ask Ash and Avatar actually for to use a sort of vignette of an example in relation to sort of how we're sort of challenging ourselves to do more on this. So one of the things that we are launching this week is our new youth programme, which on this particular area is looking to absolutely embed EDI into all of our inspection work. So rather than seeing it as an add-on, it has to be mainstreamed into everything. And Avatar, Ash, I don't know if you want to say anything about the new programme and how important that is to the new youth programme. Just put you on the spot because I didn't tell you I was going to ask this question in advance.
No, that's absolutely fine. I mean, colleagues who are on the call who may be from a youth justice background will be aware that the core programme that has currently been running has integrated within the standards across the various domains questions and prompts around diversity. Now, what has happened is that we as an inspectorate believe that those prompts and those considerations for youth justice services have been really, really helpful. And we have seen new initiatives being birthed, whereby things are being done now that weren't being done before to address the needs of children with different protected characteristics and different lived experiences. What we see is that society is forever evolving, forever changing, and we need to ensure that we also change. So the new standards which have been designed are very much building on the work that has already been done in the current programme, and they have been enhanced and made sharper to ensure that diversity remains central. And within all reporting, there is a section in each of the reports around diversity in terms of our findings. So the new standards are building on the existing core programme. They have been enhanced, and I think we're confident that moving forward that they will be helpful to enable organisations to grow and to be agencies that better understand the lived experiences of children with their different protected characteristics, and will seek out resources and interventions that will help them to live their best lives.
Perfect, thank you, Avtar. That's a great explanation of what we're doing. Louise, did you say you had a second question that had been asked in advance? Or did I mishear you?
The question that we'd answered in advance, we didn't have anything come through in advance, but something I knew we were keen to pick up today was whether anyone on the call had any examples of how they've been working to embed EDI within their own organisations, or anything they've seen working particularly well that they'd be interested in sharing today.
Great, thanks, Louise. So feel free to put up your hand if you've got anything that you'd want to share with us. Maybe we can come and talk to you afterwards in relation to actually if there's anything we can copy. Plagiarism is always the best form of compliment in my experience. But if not, do feel free to email anybody on the team in relation to anything that you want to share from us that we think we might be able to learn from. Chantel.
I think one of the things that certainly been looking at is a better use of the data that we have, instead of making assumptions, of which obviously that there can be, which is across the board, but particularly in this particular area. And a lot of the push is very much as well to make sure that our data sets we have as much information as we can, because if we're missing out on bits through any kind of declaration rates or recordings that there might be, then that can obviously be a challenge, because we might be missing out on a particular section, even if it's a couple of percentage that we don't have that's there, and really trying to highlight and push the importance of that, rather than I don't almost the reliance on thinking about professional judgment, which obviously has its place in terms of things, but those assumptions can be biased in some way with that. So that's been a big part of the work. I don't really have any particular examples, but it's just a bit of a fundamental way of trying to do that and using the data that's available. And I know I spoke to the Office of National Statistics 2 weeks ago at Civil Service Live, and they've mentioned that there's quite a bit of work that they can do to support that with some of the data that they hold, which is quite interesting to find out about.
Thank you, Chantel. I think that's a really good example, and I'll give you an example actually of the use of data if I can from my previous role. So before I took up the role here as Chief Inspector, I was Chief Executive of the Parole Board, and one of our jobs there is to decide whether people are safe to be released from prison having committed sometimes some very serious offences. Now, when I joined the Parole Board, we hadn't published any data on release rates or the chances of success at parole by ethnicity for about 8 years. Now, when I looked at the reason for that, the reason was because we'd published some data previously and it was relatively benign. And therefore people said we don't need to worry about it. My view is that if it's relatively benign, we'll carry on publishing it or maybe interrogate it a little bit more. So one of the things that we did was we unpicked the data, and you're absolutely right. Sometimes there's a reluctance on the basis, well, the data may only be sort of 97% accurate because, of course, the data systems are not perfect. Well, my view is, okay, I'd rather publish something and be open about something which is 97 to 98% accurate than not publishing it. Because when we got down to the actual data, what we found was the chances of you being released from prison if you were a black man was about 7 to 8 percentage points lower at an oral hearing than for a white person. Now that absolutely was something which, unless we'd interrogated the data, we would not have known, and we could have gone back to this is judicial decision making and of course professional judgments, as you say, but what does it tell you about the underlying decision making and the underlying trust in the system? Aligned to that, we were doing a separate piece of work at the Parole Board around the lack of diversity on the Parole Board membership itself, and when I joined the Parole Board, we had 4% of Parole Board members were from a black or other minority background. I think probably there was a link between those two things. I wouldn't necessarily say that it's necessarily binary, but I think there's a sort of strong interdependency. The other question for me, having spoken to prisoners about it, was a question of trust and confidence. Actually, if you're going to the Parole Board, you're going 3 or 4 times and all you ever see is a group of people maybe my age, maybe sometimes older, white people deciding whether to release you from prison. Do you trust and have confidence that that decision is going to be fair? We did a lot of work around this, understanding the data, understanding the reports, because of course the decisions that are made are driven by the evidence, but also looking at improving the diversity of the membership. Now, when I left the Parole Board, we had 18% of our membership were from minority backgrounds. We'd quadrupled the proportion of members from minority backgrounds, and the difference between release rates was down to about 0.2%. Now, I think it's not necessarily as simple as saying, well, okay, then there's all sorts of things and all the decisions that you could take can be challenged by a judicial review and appeal. But I think there's a strong independency in relation to just freshening up the lifeblood in those conversations as part of that. So I think every organisation should need to be open. And sometimes when you see the data, it may not give you the answer that you necessarily would want, but at least it causes you to ask yourself some questions. And I think it shows that, you know, again, back to the area of cultural humility. I remember a young black guy, Brixton Prison, said to me, Martin, you know, I've been to 3 or 4 parole hearings. I've never seen anybody other than a white person. Why is that? And I could have given him some psychobabble, and my answer was because we're not diverse enough and we need to tackle that. And you need to take it on the chin and say we're going to do something about it. And I think it's really, really important that you understand people's experience and the impact that has on trust and confidence. And that's certainly the way of which I think all organisations, including HMI Probation, can learn and improve and ensure. And that's the reasons why I love the plan that the team have come up with.
Excellent. Thank you, Martin.
Thank you, Chantel. Really good question. I can't see any other questions in the chat. So given the fact we are now 5 minutes away from the end of the call, I just wanted to thank everybody for coming to this launch of our strategy. As I said, we'll be coming back in a year or so's time to sort of talk about what progress we've made. I just want to thank all of the group actually for the work they put into this, and in particular Simi and Avtar that have co-chaired this group to get it to its place that it is now. A huge amount of work and passion that have gone into this. Now Dave is now stepping in as the co-chair because Simi has only got a few weeks left before she goes away and has a baby. So I just want to thank everybody for their huge work on it. It's an incredibly important part of our work, and hold us to account in relation to us living up to the ambition that we've got in our strategy. Thank you, and I hope you all have a very good day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Cheers,
Bye.
everyone.